Hello and welcome back to the show. So I'm really excited about my guest today. Joining us, Jason Rosado, who is a top business coach specializing in helping service-based businesses actually improve not just your professional, but also your personal lives, and actually helping you design your business in a way where it uplifts you, energizes you instead of draining you. So Jason's been coaching businesses, service-based businesses, small businesses, and even teams within large corporations for multiple years. And he's going to be sharing with us today how you can actually design your business in a way that serves your life instead of the other way around. So Jason, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you join us here today.
Thank you so much. Really great to be here.
Yep, absolutely. So, before we get started, why don't you take an opportunity and just kind of share with us a little bit about, who you are, so that way the audience knows a little bit more about you and your background and history, and, how did you get to where you are here today, where you're helping other businesses and coaching them up to really improve their lives?
Yeah, thanks. Well, so, you know, I I started coaching, it's actually 20 years ago. And when I did that, I noticed that so many small business owners work a ton, especially people in real estate, just working a ton. Um, and they're spread really thin. They don't have the time, the focus to be able to grow the business, to figure out what's the right strategy. If they have agents who work for them, the brokers, how do they best manage them? Everyone on the team is in sales, and sometimes they see themselves as competitors for each other. So I've seen that a lot with clients. So anyway, the point is that a lot of times people get into business for themselves because they want financial security, they want time freedom, they want work-life balance, they want to focus on the areas of business and work that they absolutely love, that light them up, that energize them. And then they get into running a business and they usually don't get any of that. Right? So instead, what they get is headache, stress, deadlines, demanding clients, people on their team who need hand holding, you know, and they just, so many of my clients come to me because they are in a business that's, hanging on by a thread and they're stressed their time. They're not able to see their family. They're helping so many people. And I'm really, really going into it, trying to paint a picture, but I think people can really relate to this. I just see it over and over. When, so when I went into business in coaching, I saw that there was this need, and that entrepreneurs specifically, and again, off people in real estate, they just aren't getting what they thought they would get out of it. And a lot of people, so let's take an agent. So let's say that she works for another agent and is really good. She's a top producer, um, doing great, loves what she does, and then wakes up one day and says, you know what? Why do I have to split my commissions with other people? I'm doing all the work or most of the work. And, I would really I'd like to be a leader and I'd like to provide opportunities for other people. So she decides to open up her own agency. And, I mean, I've seen this again, a lot of my clients. Um, but what she didn't have and what a lot of other people don't have is a background in how do you manage people? How do you run a business? So being the best agent, the best broker in your firm doesn't necessarily translate to being the best business owner, the best leader, the best motivator, best delegator. Plus, you still want time to do deals, to find buyers, to find sellers, to find investors and make things happen. And a lot of times, a lot of that stuff gets pushed to the side because you're so busy doing this. So my background, before coaching, I was in the corporate world. And my last full-time job, I was training manager at the company I was at. So I had a team of trainers that I managed, ran, developed, in the training department. Plus, I was in charge of training and development from entry level through director level. And this was a telecom company. It was a conferencing company. So we did audio, video, and web conferencing. And before that, I was in financial services at a mutual fund company, and I was in the call center managing a team of investment reps. And before that, I had a restaurant for a couple of years. And it was a second location of a restaurant that I had already been working at starting when I was in high school. So, throughout this career of running businesses, running teams, running departments, and getting really good at that. And I was fortunate to be in some companies that had really great management and leadership training because most companies don't. And small businesses don't have it at all. Right. So I was lucky. I was really lucky to have this, and also just to have this kind of leadership thing running throughout my life because there was stuff before that that maybe we'll get into later. And when I started working with entrepreneurs, when I started working with brokers and managing brokers, I noticed that they didn't have any of this background. They didn't really know how to set goals, how to create performance reviews for people, incentives, how to incentivize people, not just, okay, I can give you, quarter of a percentage point more on your commissions. Um, and sometimes that works, and sometimes that makes a difference. And, I mean, raises always help, but usually people get motivated, find ownership of what they're doing. You get really involved by stuff way beyond money and way beyond incremental raises. And they don't have that background. So I took that background and started coaching and working with small business owners and watching them be able to grow, to be able to keep employees, make their employees really great at what they do. And in the end, a lot of my clients will double or triple their business within 6 to 12 months. So it was probably a really long answer, but I think, we covered most of the bases there.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you have such a unique background in what it is that you've done before getting into coaching, right? So you were on the corporate side where you understood exactly what it is to, train people and, how the big companies out there are designing, like you said, their incentive program, their motivation program. So you've also had experience running your own small business as well. And I think what you mentioned earlier is absolutely correct in that small business owners, they don't have a system, right, to become a business owner. A lot of small business owners, especially in real estate, are great as individual operators, right? As an agent,
Mhm.
you go out there, you sell, you generate clients, leads, right? And you can become a top producer by yourself. But to make that transition into being an actual business owner where you have systems, have other people working with you, that's, I think, where the biggest gap is. Is that something that you've seen a lot of small business owners struggle with, which
Oh
is
yeah.
making that jump, right, from solo operator to
Yeah.
owner?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me tell you about one of my clients. So we were in a referral group together, like a leads generation group together, and he was my client. We actually met in that group, and I was the featured speaker this one week, and I hadn't really thought a whole lot about, okay, what should I talk about? So we got there, and I said, hey, Adam, do you mind if I'm the featured speaker today, do you mind if I interview you and just ask you some questions about coaching, what it's like, what you've seen, what's happened? He's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, oh, great. And so it was really interesting because, yeah, I asked him at that point, we've been working together for 4 months. And when we met, so I was already in the group. He sat down next to me as a guest and turned to me and we started talking. He said, what do you do? I said, well, I work with small service-based business owners and help them to double to triple their business and cut their work hours in half so they can make their team superstars so they carry the workload, move the business forward, and they can get their life back. He's like, all right, we need to talk. I said, all right, well, what makes you say that? He said, so I opened my agency a year ago. I've had a ton of turnover. I've had 14 new people start in that time frame. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's a lot. And I said, well, how many positions are we talking about? And he said three. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. That's like, he's like, so I'm working crazy hours. The business isn't really growing. I'm like, all right. So we started working together. And so now 4 months later, we're at the same meeting and I'm the speaker. And I said, just out of curiosity, I said, yeah, I'm putting you on the spot here. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but how much has the business grown in just the 4 months that we've been working together? And I said, I don't even know if it's a fair question if you can answer that, without anything in front of you. He's like, oh, I can. He started doing some air math, which I thought was really funny. And then and then he said, it's grown by 35%. And I was like, that's awesome because again, a lot of my clients do double their business within a year. So he was totally on track for that. And actually it's usually a U-shaped curve because it's not linear because you're learning, 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 and then the more you learn, the better, things snowball and it's cumulative. So he actually ended up doing much better than that. Um, but I was like, great. And then I took questions from the audience, and one person asked him, what's the biggest difference that you see? Or, what surprised you the most about working with Jason and going into coaching? And he said, the thing that surprised me the most, so this goes back to your question, the thing that surprised me the most is that I came in being the top producer. I was the top producer for somebody else's agency. I opened my own. I was the top producer. I always thought I'd be the top producer. Like there was no doubt in my mind. And he said, I'm not anymore. And that just blows my mind because now I'm spending my time coaching my employees on how to be top producers. And yes, I'm still out there. I'm still out there doing deals. I'm still getting clients, but it's not my sole focus where I always thought it had to be. And now it's not. And it's great because I can step back. So much of the pressure is relieved and the business is growing. And incidentally, what ended up happening was the first thing he and I worked on was his vision of what he wants the agency to look like, what his role is in it. So what's he focusing on day to day? What does he want to get out of it? And then figured out who he already has and who's really good. Who can we, even if they're not really good, how can we get them to be good? How can we increase their performance and their output while also making them really happy? Because I don't want, for my clients, my mission is to help them have employees who stay for the long haul. They don't quit, they don't get fired, they're superstars. So we did that and also helped him with the interview process because, he realized he had like one or two people, but still needed one or two more people who were really good. So then I helped him with the interview process of how to screen in the right people and screen out the wrong people. So we did that, and he ended up with three really, really great employees. He was able to build this really wonderful culture, and he brought in his own ideas, like starting a book club, for them, and doing all these things, and having recognition dinners. He took them on a weekend trip somewhere. I don't remember. I wish I could remember now where it was, but he took them on a weekend trip, just to show his appreciation because they were killing it. Um, so yes, people come in, they don't know what they're doing, they don't know how to manage people. And I help them to do that because they don't have a background in that.
Yeah, and that's what it's funny because you mentioned, as somebody who was a top producer before, and they realized the biggest shift was they were no longer the top producer anymore in their business. I think for, specifically for real estate agents, that's actually something that they struggle with a lot because when they go into kind of a management position, into a leadership position, they feel like they need to be the hardest working person. They feel like they need to be, producing even more, maybe even double. And then when they realize that, they can't do that all the time and they have to actually help other people. They have to actually let go of some of their production and they struggle with that. Is that something that you've seen with either your real estate clients, other businesses? And if it is, how do you, help them make that, I guess, mental shift, right? Where they
Mhm.
have to kind of almost, let go of some of their production in order to step into a better, more effective role to help their team and their business actually grow.
Right. Well, any change can be scary, right? Especially when you're talking about almost like changing your identity. You've been the top producer, you're really great at it. You love your clients. A lot of the agents I work with, they are spread too thin. They're trying to cover too much geography and too many different types of deals. And we really focus that in, like, who's your best client? Who do you really want to work with? If you could get 10 more people of this one kind in the door, who would that be? And then help them focus in on that. And that in itself can sometimes be scary. Um, so yeah, mindset is a huge thing I work on with my clients, how to have difficult conversations with your team, and how do you give feedback that isn't always super positive feedback, but you need people to change and to change their behavior and their outlook and the way they process information so they can be better. So there are, difficult things you have to do. Even just in the deals themselves. Obviously, you come across other agents who you're working with who are on the other side of the deal or the attorneys that can just, you know, So they're, and a lot of brokers get really used to that, and they're fine with it. But sometimes it's also cumulative if you don't clear. So boy, I'm sorry. There's so many ideas in my head right now. So one of the things that I came across in my coaching work is energy healing. And for those of you who don't know what energy healing is, think about it this way. A quick example. Let's say there's something that you've found that you've been procrastinating on. Maybe it's calling a potential client or reaching out to other agents to see how you can create strategic partnerships because you also see each other as competitors. And there's a little bit, when you think about it, a little bit of, or whatever it is, you're just, like, oh, I could do that tomorrow. I've got this other more pressing thing to do. And before you know it, you look at the calendar and it's been like 3 months of me pushing this task off and off and off. So procrastination is a great example. What I do with my clients is help them figure out where in their body, because emotions get lodged in our bodies and tissue, and how to clear that emotion so it's no longer stopping you from being able to do what you want to do. And so we use energy healing because it's very quick. There's a lot of mindset techniques, and a lot of coaches. And before I learned these techniques, we absolutely worked on mindset, but the way we did it was more like, let's help people take baby steps, build confidence, see that they can do this, and you just build, which still is great. And I highly recommend it because it's cumulative and you build little by little. These techniques that I learned now, they help to blast some of these things through within minutes, sometimes seconds. So I'm able to help people get past these blocks. And so it was so funny. I remember, so I first started learning this. Let's see, it was 1 year after I started coaching. I didn't know that much about it, and I didn't fully understand it, and I tried doing it on me, and it didn't even work, and I had a really hard time with it. Also, I'm a very left-brain person. I grew up very analytical, and you do have to be able to kind of let go of that a little bit for the process to work. But having somebody with you to teach you, it makes it so much easier. And it was demonstrated to me, but I didn't really have somebody holding my hand and walk me through it. Um, so I tried it, and then I I remember I came back home from this workshop where I got certified, and I got on a client, and it was with a broker, and he was going on about, it was something about his mom. And we came into the session. I said, "Well, what challenges have you come up to this week? What's stopping you, slowing you down right now?" And he said, "Well, my mom," and he just went on and on about this thing. He was totally in his head. And I said to myself, let me see if I could do some energy healing on him, because I was still testing it. Like, does this stuff actually really work? Like, it looks like it does, but it's so out there and so different from anything I was, experienced with. So I didn't even tell him what I was doing. I was just going, uh-huh, uh-huh. And I started doing some energy work on him. And it took me a few minutes. And then he took a pause. And I said, Charles, what was it that you were just telling me about? And he's like, I don't know. That's weird. It's just kind of gone. And I was all right. And I said, well, you're telling me about your mom. He's like, oh, right. That's right. And then I said, well, are you still feeling the angst about it and, the worry and fear that you were telling me about? He's like, no, I don't know why. It's all of a sudden it's gone. And all my coaching is on the phone, so we don't do video. My jaw like hit the floor. I was like, holy, wow, that's amazing. So I forgot your initial question, but helping people to get past blocks that stop them. It was something along those lines, right? So it's one of the
Yeah.
tools I use, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It was, I think you answered that, almost perfectly, right? Which is basically, what are some of the ways that you're helping people who get, who are stuck in one role, who have this identity of being a top producer,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
actually jump into a different identity, right? Which is, I
Right.
think something like energy healing is quite unique, and it's a different way to look at things because these are not concepts that you can really, I would say, be able to implement intellectually on just the intellectual level, right? Because we know what it is that we need to do. We know that we need to change identities, that we need to change rules, but to actually implement it is something completely different than understanding it from a,
Right.
from a mental level.
I couldn't say it better. You absolutely, yeah. Knowing it is one thing, and when you can talk through it, and sometimes that helps, but a lot of times it doesn't.
Yeah.
You feel better in the moment, and I mean, so for instance, and a lot of my clients, it seems like a lot of people these days are in therapy, and I think that can be a very helpful thing. Um, but I have heard over the years from my clients, like, wow, Jason, I've gotten more out of working with you in the past month than I have the past 5 years with my therapist. And like I said, sometimes my techniques happen within seconds to minutes. I mean, I've heard people say, Jason, I've gotten more out of you in the last 15 minutes than I have in the past year working with my therapist. Yeah, because a lot of times therapy, you talk and you talk and you talk things through. And sometimes that can clear it because the way to clear emotions, what it really all comes down to, whether we're doing it energy wise or doing like a guided meditation I do with my clients, I teach them the process so they don't always need me to do it. And after we're done working together, they can use it for the rest of their life. And my clients do come back and tell me that they do. And, it's really helpful for them, which is amazing. I love that. Um, and let me see, I kind of lost track of my thought there. Oh, the way to really clear blocks. What you're doing is you're detaching yourself from the angst that you feel, oftentimes on a subconscious level. So if you can bring that feeling to consciousness and then let go, and the reason sometimes talking, even just talking with a friend, talking things through, you feel better and it does clear it, is because by talking through it, you have made that disassociation, you have released it and you're no longer attached to those feelings. So it can work, but usually it doesn't. Usually you talk through it, you feel better in the moment, but the problem is still there. And you can, in your head analyze to death why something isn't working, why you act the way you do, what was it in childhood that made you have this internal psychological defense mechanism. But the way you need to release it is by going into feeling into your body, feeling where it is, and then actually sending it love. Sending because you'll feel it like in your chest or in your throat, maybe in your head, a lot of times in your gut, and just get really quiet and just send it love. And that's one of the techniques I walk my clients through and teach them how to do it and teach them how to keep out of the thoughts because thoughts will your brain tries to distract you from the feelings, from the emotion. So you'll start getting thoughts about why it's there, what's going on, why do I do this to myself? People start beating themselves up. How come I'm just lazy or I'm just not any good? Or how come these other people are so much better with their business than I am? So it can be mental gymnastics. Real quick, one of my clients who is a or past client who's a property developer, he was working 80 hours a week and he wanted to work 2 hours a week. So he went online, searched business coach, and found me and reached out, and we did a complimentary session. Which at the end, if it's okay, actually, I have a gift I'd like to give your listeners. So we can talk about that later. It's really fun. I'm excited about that. So anyway, he had a session with me, and I said we went through and took a look at where his business is now, where he'd love for it to be what the challenges were. And he said, yeah, he wants, he doesn't love what he does. Most of my clients really love what they do. He didn't. And I can understand that. But it was a good business. It was making money. His objective wasn't more growth per se. Um, but he just didn't want to really, he wanted to come in, work 2 hours, do some high level deals, manage his team a little bit, and then walk out the door. And he wanted to do that 2 hours a week instead of 80 hours a week. So we go through and I give him some assessments and we talk about what's working and what isn't. And we get to the end, and I said, well, I see that you have a really great foundation in place. I know I can help you. And how long have you been working on reducing your work hours? And he said, about 6 months. I said, okay, well, how much progress have you made? He's like, zero. I was like, all right. Well, like I said, you have a really great foundation in place. I think you have more than you realize. And I know I can help you to do this. And I want to say, I think we can get you to 2 hours a week in 2 months working together, maybe three just to be on the safe side. And he's like, all right. So we started working together. And what we did was we took a look at his team and the structure, moved some things around a little bit, helped him to work on the mindset and releasing the fears about delegating more and trusting his people. That was the biggest thing we did. And we actually got him from 80 hours down to 2 hours in 1 month. So working together. Yeah, his business was running. He just could step away, walk away, go on vacation. He was interested in actually starting a clothing line. And he also wanted to do some day trading, which he had already started. So now he was able to focus solely on those things. So when you release these blocks that keep you stuck, you release the fears. Now you can trust your employees more. You can work on the deals that are much more inspirational to you, the things that you really love doing. You put your focus on your time on where your passion is in your business. And that also just makes you better and better. And then you are also a great role model for your team and you help them to be better and better. So, that's one example.
Yeah, I think that's a great example because, from what it sounds like, this person that you worked with who had this business who's working 80 hours a week, they were able to really shift really nothing else aside from maybe just their mindset and letting go of their fears to reduce that to 2 hours, which for a lot of people sounds insane, right? Which is
Right.
you're literally going from one end of the spectrum to how hard you're working to the other end of the spectrum, and they're not necessarily losing any business. So it does sound like this person actually had everything in place to make that happen, but
Hmm.
they just weren't doing it, right? They
Right.
just weren't implementing it. So it's so funny
Yeah.
sometimes that we almost have the tools and the physical aspects, the tangible aspects of how to make our business run on its own, but we're not, you know, brave enough or courageous enough, if you will, to
Right.
let go of that so that we can have the better life that we want.
Yeah, and to that point, we have such limiting beliefs in ourselves and in each other, right? So, I mean, I've heard from when I started coaching, I heard from my family, some people in my family, like you're gonna do what? Because I originally started, I thought I was gonna be a life coach and a career coach. I didn't think I was gonna be focusing on business. And they're like, "You're going to be a life coach? What? Are you crazy?" They're like, "Who are you learning this stuff from?" I'm like, "Well, it's this guy who lives in California." And my uncle was like, well, maybe that stuff works in California, Jason, but it ain't going to fly in Chicago." I was like, "All right, thanks for the support. Love you too." Um, but so going back to this last client who was working 80 hours, I have been in networking meetings, even with other coaches, where we sat down and we were talking about how can we refer each other and how can we support each other. And they said, "Well, can you give me an example of somebody who was overworked and really stressed out?" And I said, "Yeah, let me tell you, about my client Greg." So I told them about Greg, or I said, and I said he was working 8 hours, to want to work 2 hours, and I've had this happen more than once. The person stopped me and said, "Oh wait, so let me guess." And these were other coaches. So let me guess. First thing you said was, "Well, let's talk about realistic expectations." And I was like, no, why do I want to squash someone's dream? I'm like, let's go, bring it, you know, because you can make anything happen. It's just a matter of putting the right pieces in place, getting the right support, and then getting out of your own way. So I'm a huge believer in that. I've had people come to, initial sessions and like they're making nothing right now, and they say in a year I want to be making $1 million. And in my head, I was saying, I was looking at their business model. I was like, I don't think that's going to happen. But I didn't say that out loud. I said, okay, great. Let's, because they know more than I do. They know their business better than I do. Where there's a will, there's a way. And it's my job to say, great, this is what you want. Let's figure out how to make it happen. And does it always get there? No, but when you start putting the pieces in place, you're going to go way farther than you realized, one way or the other.
Yep, 100%. And really something else that, I really kind of want to get your take on today is just one of the things that's really unique to the real estate industry. You mentioned it earlier on the show as well, which is the fact that everybody's an independent contractor. Everybody's in a sales-based position, right? So if
Yeah.
you're a managing broker, you're somebody who's, overseeing a team, growing a team, then it's a little bit different than working with employees that you're paying a salary and you can, get rid of and essentially, replace
Hmm.
if, things aren't happening. So when it comes to working with other independent contractors and motivating them and helping them, reach their full potential, do you have any when you're coaching sales teams or real estate teams specifically, any techniques or anything that you would help the team leaders implement so that they're actually able to motivate their sales team without having to, I guess, force them to do anything because you
Right.
really can't, right? Because they'll leave and they'll go to a different company.
Yeah. So one of my clients early on, this reminds me of her, Sarah. She said, boy, I haven't thought about this story in a really long time. This is literally 19 years ago. Uh, let's see. Sarah came to one of our sessions and she said, "Oh, I got a new team member." And my team member said to me, "Wow, I'm really excited to work with you. I'm really excited to learn from you. I'm so excited you're going to be my boss." And Sarah said, "Jason, you'll be really happy," because I said, "No, wait, hold on. I'm not your boss. You're working for yourself, and you're going to learn about that. You're going to do that." And I said, well, Sarah, actually, I've got a little bit different, perspective on that. If it were me and somebody came to me and said that, I'd say, awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad. You know what? You be the best employee I've ever had. I'll be the best boss you've ever had. And let's make it happen. And she was like, oh, but I've always heard that these are independent contractors and we're not supposed to, we need to be really clear on that. And yes, empower them, but do it for, and I'm like, you do it from whatever frame they are starting at. You meet them where they are. If they are thinking of themselves as your employee, you think of yourself as their boss. Who cares what it says on their tax form, if it's W-2 or 1099 or whatever? They're looking to you, they're excited, they're showing enthusiasm. So embrace that. Don't squash that, you know? Um, so I mean, and going back to like any relationship that you're in, if you're looking at referral partners, strategic partners, anything at all, you want to be a great leader. You want people to know who you are, what you stand for, how to value your relationship, how to get the most out of it, how to be great followers to your leadership so that you both really thrive. And I mean, again, this covers all areas of business. And it's the same thing whether, if you have contractors or if you have W-2 employees on staff, it doesn't matter. You need to embrace them where they are, empower them, and, see what they need. And yes, you can, as you go, if it makes sense, you can massage that messaging and transition the wording a bit and down the road, and say, well, just to remember, you are a contractor, and here are the things that you need to keep in mind as a contractor while you're still nurturing them, you're still developing them, and one thing that I see business owners, managing brokers have often is the subconscious. Sometimes it's not subconscious. I was talking with somebody the other day, one of my clients who's talking about she doesn't have enough business right now to hire new people, so she's actually she's on her own right now, but that's the goal is to get there. Um, and we were also talking about who can fill in for her when she's out of town or if she's sick, or on vacation, and who can she talk to in the community to get people who would be happy to do that. And obviously, again, these are her competitors, so we started working on the mindset stuff because to reach out to those people and have those conversations. And then same thing, she said, well, what if I bring somebody into my agency and they become good? I teach them, I train them, they become good, and then they're going to take my clients, and walk out the door. And I said, yes, but here's the thing. If you train them well, you nurture them, you develop them, you feed that relationship, they might have the opportunities and the skills to do that, but the chances are they won't. People stay where they feel valued and where they feel that they're contributing and that they feel that they're a part of something, and yes, they still might want to control their own destiny. And if you've done a great job, you'll get to the point where you'll have other people on your team who can step right in should that person leave and just be happy that you've done this tremendous job that now they can go and do that and be successful. And you're helping them. They're going to build a nation. There's plenty of work out there. There's plenty of deals out there. You don't have to covet this so tightly. But again, I can talk all those words and the person goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then inside they're still like, oh, no, no, no. So we're working on releasing those for her and she's going to be great.
Absolutely. I think it's really well said as well because, for leaders out there, you want to meet people where they're at. And that's something I don't think a lot of people think about, right? They think of themselves as kind of they want to lead a certain way, but sometimes when people come in, they want you to tell them what to do. Like a lot of times,
Right.
leaders think, we should give them space, we should let them, figure it out on their own because they want to be independent contractors just like myself. But sometimes a lot of times new agents come in, they want to be told what to do. And you have to kind of step in and really become the expert. And sometimes it's with, even working with clients too in real estate, right? Where, you're
Right.
always kind of hoping that they will make the decision or giving them space to make the decision. But a lot of times clients want you to be the expert. Just, tell me what to do. Tell me what I need to do now because I don't know anything. And you got to
Right.
step up and be confident enough to do that. So I think that is a very good point, very unique point actually for, independent contractor and sales teams leaders to implement.
Yeah. And to that point, when I'm working with clients, I'm coaching them. It's like train the trainer, right? So I'm coaching them on how to be great trainers for their team and also for their clients. And you can do that by asking coaching questions when a client gets stuck. and they're indecisive and they don't know what to do, you can just ask them like, all right, well, if you did this, what would happen? If you did that, what would happen? You know, let's forget about the choices of these two things or these three things that you're trying to decide. What do you want this to feel like after you've made all the decisions? What would that feel like to you? And give them a moment to just feel into those feelings. And then they'll say what it'll feel like. It'll feel like, yeah, well, I've made the decision. I'm in my new place. I feel great. Or I've made the sale and I've moved on, you know, from this. Sometimes if it's somebody who's passed on, they inherited property, things like that. You know, this can be really, really troubling and difficult times for them. So you just ask them, well, how do you want to feel after this is all complete? And they'll process that. And then you could say, okay, so which direction do you think will get you there the easiest and the smoothest? Then they're like, oh, and then they'll know. So, you know, sometimes it's becoming the coach yourself. And when I did this, so one of my clients, Erica, for example, who was a managing broker of her firm, we worked together in a year. We worked together for a year. Most of my clients right now, so this was a while, this was a few years ago. Most of my clients right now, I work together for about 6 months because as I've gotten better at doing what I do, I used to work with clients for a year at a time, but they're getting the results much faster. So they don't need me as long, and that's awesome. Uh, so we worked together for a year, and in that time, we got her team who saw each other as competitors instead of collaborators. We got them to come together and support each other and push each other and be really each other's cheerleaders, you know, instead of there was some not so great office politics going on before, right? And that happens. It's really common. So we worked on that. We worked on Erica's scope of her clients and the deals that she was trying to do herself, and to narrow that down so she wasn't trying to be everywhere and really scattered. We worked on her motivational skills and abilities. Uh, and we also worked on how to make really great strategic partners with other investors in the area. And in 1 year, she was able to cut her work hours by about 25%. So she was able to spend more time with her family and with her kids, who she kind of had forgotten what they looked like, which happens, on her hobbies and her health and exercising and being active. And more importantly, the revenue for the entire agency tripled during that time. So, it was again empowering her agents to be able to go out and make their own deals, but showing them how to do it and then empowering them to work together to do it. And, the transformations were amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, I just want to say thank you for joining us here today and
Sure.
really sharing some valuable advice for agents out there, for any business owners even, and especially those who are managing their own teams. Because,
Mhm.
it's really a big part of, kind of your business growth where a lot of people struggle with. And it's really impressive the results that you're able to get some of your clients and really some of the stories that you shared were quite valuable as well. So for anybody out there who is listening to this, who's watching this, that want to get a hold of you, that want to learn more about what it is that you're doing, what are some of the best ways for people to get a hold of you? What are some things that you can offer that people can actually follow you back on?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. So my website is distinctivecoaching.com, and there's links to my social there. You can sign up for the newsletter. Um, I mentioned before I'd like to give a gift to the listeners. And so what this gift is, there's a button on the website that says book a call. And what that does, it takes you to a strategy session. That strategy session is booked for half an hour. And what we do is just obviously talk about your business, where you want it to go, and what some of the challenges are. So when people are interested in working together, what I'd like to do is offer them a business breakthrough coaching session. And normally I charge $500 for that. And what we do is we take a look at where the business is now, where you'd love for it to be a year from now, with your ultimate lifestyle, income, organization, support, what all that looks like. We'll talk about the challenges and even uncover the hidden blind spots that could be slowing you down or sabotaging your efforts to get there, and then help you to create a really motivating and energizing three-stage plan to move forward over the coming year to achieve your goals faster than you thought possible. And like I said, I usually charge $500 for that. If you go to the book a call link and set up a time for us to talk, we're going to have a short conversation just to make sure this coaching session is the right fit for you, because I don't want to waste anybody's time. And if it is the right fit, and you're a listener to the podcast, I will waive the $500 fee. So just go there, click book a call, and let me know while we're on the call that you heard about me from the podcast. I'll waive the fee. We'll schedule your call if it's a good fit and a good use of your time. If it's not, I'll let you know that and try to give you some other resources. I've worked with hundreds of business owners and real estate professionals over the past 20 years, and I want to keep that going. And I just want to see, people be able to get into business, see people have what they got into business for in the first place, have financial security, feel really great about what they're doing, have time flexibility, spend more time with their family, and really enjoy what and love what they do. So is that cool if people can do that?
Absolutely. That's very
All
cool, man.
right.
It's very generous of you, Jason, for actually offering that. So we'll definitely leave the link to your website and make sure if you guys are interested in hearing about, this offer on the podcast, mention it to Jason when you guys are booking a call to really learn more about yourself, right? Your business and how you can improve and, really see some of the results happening fairly quickly as well. So Jason, I just want to say thanks again for being on the show today. Before
Thank
we
you.
wrap up, is there any just last pieces of advice, just any last things you want to leave with us here today?
Yeah. I'd say get really clear on what it is that you want to achieve, believe in yourself, believe in the people around you, and go do it.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man. Jason, thanks again for being on the show. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in the next show. Take
Thanks so
care.
much.